Hi, and good afternoon. Welcome to the Brigitte Bartley Show. Today we have Ted Phaeton, which I am so excited he is here with us. Before we get started, I wanted to give a thank you to Old Europe Pastries for sponsoring today's show. Old Europe Pastries is located at 716 South Main Street in Greenville. They just opened about a month ago, but it's European pastries, locally roasted coffee, breakfast, lunch. They have wine as well, and they also have catering. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you stop in and say hello to Bobby. But I want to welcome Ted from Fox News on today's. But Fox is not his only title, and we're going to get into that. But he is an anchor meteorologist for Fox Carolina, based in Greenville, South Carolina. Co-anchors the morning newscast. He's also the host of No Rain, No Rainbows podcast, which I can't wait to dive into that. And also the founder of Modern Man. And like me, he's foodie, he's into fitness, he loves the outdoors and all of that. So, Ted, welcome to the show.
Bridget, thank you for having me.
Because this is technically, because you're on air at what, 4:30, or you have to be at work at 4:30?
On air at 4:30. That's when we start.
Okay, so what time do you wake up?
2:20. The alarm goes off at 2:20, and that's unnegotiable. No snooze button. 2:20, I'm up.
So is this lunch for you? Like, we're in the daytime typically.
Usually this is dinner.
Okay.
This is towards like the end of the day, but that's based on my schedule. The way I handle my day, this is pretty much lunchtime still, because I have an active lifestyle, as you mentioned. It's kind of hard to believe I do those things, but they keep me busy and they keep my schedule full.
Yeah, and that's something, because not only are you with Fox Carolina, but you've got the podcast and the Modern Man, and then I know tomorrow night you're emceeing at a gala, so you definitely juggle a lot on top of your relationship, on top of the social life. You do stuff for GVL Hustle, so you definitely manage a lot. So one thing that we've had a lot of people curious about is how you ended up in Greenville, but also how you became interested in the weather.
Okay. So I told that story this morning at Generation Kid Strong to a group of kids about my first memory of weather was when I was really little. It was 1993. I think I was 6 years old. There was a huge snowstorm. School day, I'm helping my dad shovel. And the wind's blowing. I open the face of the shovel to the wind, and it just picks me up and throws me. And I thought it was a good time. My dad was scared. My mom was freaking out, like, come inside and don't go outside anymore. But that always stuck with me, and I think that's like my first memory of weather. It's one of my earliest memories, and it really didn't bite me again until college, when after my first year of college, I was studying computer science. I was finding out the hard way it wasn't for me, so it was a perfect storm of not into what I was studying, joining a fraternity. The chains are off, so end of my freshman year of college, I had a 1.9 GPA, and I'm on academic probation, not sure what I'm going to do. I'm on vacation with friends, and I see a bird dive into the ocean, and I'm just talking to my friends about the tide and all this stuff, and my friend just looks at me, and drinks might have been involved here, but he just looks at me, and he's just like, how do you know all this stuff? And I just told him, I said, hey, it always interested me. Mm-hmm. And he said, we had a great meteorology program, and I made my decision then and there. I was like, well, when I go home, I'm canceling my whole syllabus for my sophomore year. I'm signing up for weather classes, and that's what I'm going to do. So I declared my broadcast meteorology major, and 3 years later graduated with a degree.
That's awesome. And now you are officially certified through the National Weather Association.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so do people ever come up to you in public and blame you for the weather?
All the time. All the time. If the weather's bad, they'll kind of give me a look, and they say, oh, Ted, really? When's the sun going to come out? And I always laugh. It's like, if you're going to praise, or if you're going to blame me for the bad, I'd like some praise for the good.
Right.
And I used to always say, I'm always on the losing battle, because, they'll be like, oh, thank God for this beautiful day. But if it's bad, it's like, oh, why is it raining, Ted?
Right.
So I'm like, come on, man. Give me some good, too.
I know. I've wondered how many people. And then there's people. So one of the questions that we had from somebody, we had actually several questions coming in, but one in specifically was, why is our air quality been terrible the past few days in Simpsonville?
Yeah.
And it's been at 100 to 119. And we were talking about that before. You totally knew what that meant. Yeah.
So a lot of times they talk about ground level ozone, which for those watching or listening, and if it's going over your head, let me break it down for you. Ozone, it's O3, and it's dangerous to breathe a lot of that in. And that happens usually in the morning when you have really hot temperatures mixed with a lot of NOx emissions. And NOx emissions, that's a fancy way of saying the smoke that comes out of your tailpipe from your car. So 7:30 in the morning every day, I-85 backs up because of all the traffic. You have a lot of cars out on the road, so you have a lot of that smoke coming out of the car. You mix that with a hot summer day when the sun is beating down and temperatures are kind of ramping up into the upper 70s and 80s. What happens is a chemical reaction where you have ground level ozone. That becomes dangerous to breathe in, so that's when they'll put out in air quality. So as you know, past couple of days, it's been pretty hot in the morning. So I would kind of say that's probably the reasoning behind it.
There you have it. There's your answer.
Yeah.
And so that's just interesting. So you've transitioned, but you're doing the anchor position now. You're not really doing the weather anymore. Because the other morning when I watched, just to be honest, I don't watch the news.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm just one of those people. I don't even watch the news, and it's honestly just a time thing. But I watched the other morning, and I did notice that you were just doing the anchor position. So you're not even doing the meteorology or the weather anymore.
Yeah, not so much. I've still done it here and there. This past May, I actually was back in the Weather Center forecasting and delivering the forecast. Last year for Hurricane Florence, I was in Myrtle Beach and Murrells Inlet and covered the storm. Covered it live, which I actually really enjoyed doing.
I was going to ask if you were like a storm chaser.
I do.
Do you
enjoy
love the
doing
adrenaline off that? You're one of those that stand while the wind's blowing like 50 miles an hour. And
there's something about it. I don't know. I think I've learned to embrace uncertainty, and those are the times where I've gotten to meet people that were in it and actually help. I've gotten to hear their stories firsthand and share it, but I've also gotten to see something I spent 4 years studying, something I've kind of read about. And when you see it in person, quite frankly, the pictures don't always do it justice.
Right.
And to be there and experience it, I don't want to say it's something exciting because lives are at risk here, but it's something that it piques my nerves and makes me feel alive when I do it. So I've always enjoyed covering hurricanes, specifically. The past 5-6 years I've been in Greenville, South Carolina. Every major storm, named storm that affected the South Carolina coast, the East Coast, I was lucky enough to cover. So,
and that was actually another question from somebody off social media. What does the hurricane season look like this year?
Yeah.
Can you even project that?
So you can predict the likelihood of a hurricane season being above or below normal. And this is coming from a spot of, I don't want to say a spot of ignorance, because I still know the weather hasn't left me, but it's also something that has to be monitored, paid attention to. And I'm not well read currently on what the current hurricane season is. But what we pretty much look at between the National Hurricane Center, between our meteorologist, we look at patterns, and there's a lot of science and different ripple effects that can affect a hurricane season. And whether it's El Nino, La Nina year, whether we're seeing a wetter or drier than normal pattern, that's going to kind of gauge if we're going to see above or below normal hurricane season. I can say that in recent years we've seen, and I'm pretty sure many would agree, we've seen a lot more impactful hurricanes than in the years prior. I'm not going to speculate as to where that came from, but I think what we are seeing, I think we're already on Flossie, which is F in the alphabet, and the hurricane names, they go in order. So we're already on F, so we've been seeing a pretty active season so far. We always say it only takes one. It only takes one major hurricane to impact the coast to have a significant impact on the country. So regardless if it's above or below, just pay attention, and you can expect the hurricane season to peak around August into October.
Right. Well, thank you for that too.
Yeah.
And so going into being an anchor, because we were talking about this before we got started, which you were telling a secret, and you don't know my secret, but we'll share secrets.
Yeah.
Where I was saying, to me, this position is easier versus reading off of a screen, because for me to process the words and to read, and to me this is like more in flow to just have a talk show or just to talk more fluently. Yeah. And you were like, well, you don't know my secret.
Yeah.
That's like one of my challenges.
Yeah. My secret was, I was that kid in high school. I don't know if anyone could relate when you had to read out loud in class, and each student takes a paragraph. I was the student that would count heads and pre-read my paragraph, and I would read that thing 3 or 4 times so I could memorize it because I was terrified of reading out loud. And then you always had a student in the class that was an overachiever would read 2 paragraphs, and that would throw me off, and I'd freak out like, oh no. But reading out loud scared me. And when an opportunity to be in morning anchor came up, the first thing I thought was, I have to read prompter. Like, I have to read out loud every day in front of people. So it really scared me. And because it scared me, I kind of felt inclined to say yes. And that's been 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And where I am now, I'll be honest, to start, it was a little rocky because not only are you reading out loud, now you're reading words that are moving.
Mm-hmm. And you're live.
And you're live. So there's no going back. There's no taking back what you said. And you can pre-read the scripts. You could read them ahead of time. But then you have breaking news situations sometimes where we call it cold reading. Mm-hmm. The first time you see the script is when you're on air. And, that's when the sweat glands really used to open up. And they still do. But now I think I've gotten a confidence about it. I've become a very avid reader. Like I read in my free time. I read books that I'm interested in, and I'm always reading. And that's helped me with my on-air delivery, and it's helped me gain comfort. So it was a fear that I had to overcome, and I think it's still a fear I have to this day, but I keep doing it to get better.
That's so interesting. So similar to that, when I was it was middle school and high school, reading comprehension was always a challenge for me. So I always tested very poorly on the standardized test. So I was that kid. You were talking about you were that kid. I was that kid that was pulled out of her classes while all my friends were in AP English.
Yeah.
I was in the other building in remedial English because of the reading and the comprehension. And then I had a speech impediment too, which probably was connected to the reading comprehension. So then to fast forward 25, 30 years later that now I have a microphone, like it's still, there's like some fear with it, but that's in turn, we take those steps to overcome those fears. That's originally why I started doing like Facebook Lives and Insta stories. Is just to help overcome that fear. So
Keep
that's interesting.
exposing yourself to it, right? And
Absolutely.
to quote Dr. Seuss, "Oh, the places you will go."
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Well, and that goes into with what you're doing with the podcast, which, I've told you this numerous times, which so much admiration I have for you. When I first met you was at the GVL Hustle, but, and I kept saying, I was telling my friend Logan, I said, he looks so familiar. And I asked her like 5 times, she's like, well, he's on the news. I'm like, that's where I know him from. I think I've seen like on billboards and advertisements and stuff. But to hear you speak and you had such a positive energy about yourself, and then I heard what you were doing with the podcast and Modern Man, and just have so much respect for you with how you're using your voice from the community, the respect that you've earned in the community, and you're using that to better mankind, basically worldwide, because your podcast, the No Rain, No Rainbows, you talk about, when I was looking at it, like from fitness to marriage, relationships, health, business, like
Life.
Everything. Yeah, you talk about everything. So what prompted you to start that?
Yeah, well, thank you for those kind words. It's really humbling. And, I do hope to have an impact, a positive impact. And I think what kind of pushed me to start that was we just talked about, working with Fox Carolina and moving over into the anchoring role. I got to a spot in my life kind of looking around I never saw myself being, and that was kind of a wake-up call for me. It's like, okay, I don't want to say I stumbled to where I am because it took work, but I think I was just working and I was just following the path in front of me, and when I stopped and smelled the roses and saw where I was surprised with the progress I made, and that also kind of was the start of my reflection, the things I've been through, the things I got through, which I could touch on really quick. But I think I saw where I was and how I got there and what I went through. And I wanted to share that story, and I wanted to find out other people's story because I don't know anyone that's successful that hasn't gone through hard times, right? I think we all have that in common. We all have our own different struggles, and my struggle looks different than yours. But, I think what I am skilled at is resonating with other people and accepting them for who they are, knowing that they've had a struggle. And if you want me to share mine.
Absolutely, yeah, I would love, and I call this the story behind the glory, because one of the things that I, tell people is facts tell, story sell.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to hear more about that story.
So for me, it started after I graduated, and I was working at a law firm. And like I said, I graduated with broadcast meteorology. I was ready to be a weatherman. That wasn't in the cards. That jobs weren't available. I worked at a law firm in a cubicle, wasn't for me, and I kind of spiraled into a dark place. And on top of that, I started having stomach issues. Ended up getting diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which, sparing the viewers the gruesome details, it wasn't good. I was at one point in a hospital bed, and the surgeon was telling me they're going to do a CAT scan. If they don't like what they see, they're taking me to Mount Sinai in New York City, and they're going to take my large intestine out. Well, I'm 23 years old at this time, and that's earth-shattering for a 23-year-old to hear. And a lot of the doctors say, well, what's your stress level like? Well, my stress level's pretty high at work. What's your diet like? Well, my diet's pretty bad because, I'm semi-depressed. I don't like what I'm doing, and I'm eating 20-piece chicken nuggets from McDonald's and a large fry and a sweet tea like 2-3 times a week. Like, I was in a very bad mental place, which led to a very bad health place. Mm-hmm. And in the hospital, there was no one to blame but me. So coming out of the hospital, I had to change my mindset. I changed my energy. I changed my positivity. I fully embraced the job that I was at. And in a year's time, I got a job in Saginaw, Michigan to be a weatherman. And I moved out there, and I completely changed my life in those 12 months. And while I'm shopping to furnish my new apartment and be a weatherman, I'm so excited. And I'm like, this is my dream job, that I'm finally making it. We're in a thrift store buying some things to, put around my apartment. And I see this little wooden plaque. It's almost like it was hidden, but it was just sitting there. It just spoke to me. And it said one phrase. It's a little wooden plaque painted on it. It said, "No rain, no rainbows." And that hit me. And to this day, it hangs up in my office. And I feel like I'm getting a little emotional right now, but it's just like, that summed up everything I just went through in those 4 words. No rain, no rainbows. And from that point on, it's been my life mantra. It's been what I believe. And like I said, it's in my office still. And that's kind of what I live by to this day.
I thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Rainbows have always been my sign from God, where, you're like, okay, like, where are you? What's going on? But then I would always see a rainbow, and then I'd see a double rainbow. And mm-hmm. I've never heard that exact phrase, but then it would always be relevant to, okay, you've got to go through the storm to get the rainbow.
Yeah.
And to know that there's a rainbow at the end. That's cool that you still have that plaque in your office.
Oh, yeah. And I plan on keeping it for a very long time. And, I mean, it's just something that stays with me because I just come out of the storm. Mm-hmm. Just came out of a very dark place. And it wasn't the end of my storms, but it was kind of like the validation where, you go through the rain, but there's a rainbow at the end of the storm. Mm-hmm. And it makes the storm, it doesn't make it any less severe, if you would, to kind of use the weather terms. Mm-hmm. But, it's kind of like saying, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a reason for your pain. And when you get there, it's all going to be worth it because, just working in the news business, whenever we have these big storms that hit and we're wall to wall and we're covering it and we're covering all the storm reports, what we also get is a lot of inboxes, a lot of people emailing the station pictures of rainbows in their backyard while they're driving home, and it hits people. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just it's something that speaks into what we experience in the real world.
And so I love how you channel the podcast because you're basically sharing other people's stories.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things for me why I decided to start speaking out more with my story years ago is because I heard another lady's story. It inspired me to, okay, I can do this. Mm-hmm. Like we were very similar with our backgrounds, with our nationalities, with business, like everything. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if she can do it, I could do it. And then I thought, well, because she shared her story, I'm where I am. So I felt an obligation to share mine and speak out more and live a little bit more out loud. And now sharing other people's stories too, because it's definitely relatable. Because I think do you feel like people look at you and think like you just have this perfect life on camera? You've got like this great figure, beautiful girlfriend, like lovely city. Well,
the biggest thing I think I realized lately is we admire other people. We admire other people's lives because we don't see, what's backstage. if you watch Broadway, anybody that loves Broadway, or even anybody that watches our newscast, you see what the cameras want you to see. You see what's on stage, but you don't see what's behind stage left. You don't see the ropes and the pulleys and the gears that are back there to kind of make the production go. And I think it's easy for us to admire the show and forget what's going into making it work. We forget the difficult times.
Right.
Because we like to focus on what's good. Our lives are hard enough, right? I have enough issues and problems, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But when I go out in the real world and I see other people, I want to see their success because I'm trying to get away from my pain.
Right.
So I think we compare other people's success to our pain, and that almost paints a false picture. Because by no means is my life perfect, and by no means is it easy. And if it looks that way, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to make it look that way.
Well, it's kind of how social media is. I mean, it's a highlight reel. And so, there's people out there that keep it raw and real and vulnerable and authentic, and you're definitely one of them. I did a post last week, and it was talking about Howard Schultz with Starbucks and Walt Disney and Harry Potter, and it was basically saying if you feel like you're at the end and you're exhausted, want to give up, then something new is about to come. And you made the most perfect comment, and I was like, how perfect from a meteorologist to say it. But you said, it's like the smell of the rain before you feel the first drop.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember that post. And
I do.
It's just, I was like, that's so true. Because when storms come, which by the way, I'm scared of thunderstorms still this day. They freak me out. Because they're so unpredictable. And that's where it just scares me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a control person. So because they're so unpredictable, and the loud thunder, even though thunder, isn't it just like hot and cold air?
Yeah, well, it's pretty much the sound of lightning.
It scares me. It scares me. But I love the smell of it. And when you gave that analogy, I'm like, that's so true. Because I know that, we have, you're in your business and we've got like the podcast and, Jess is in her business and stuff, but we work and work and we work. And sometimes it's like, when is the fruit going to start to ripen?
Yeah.
And then when you said that, and I was like, oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
You almost sense it, right?
Right.
And I think, and I see what you do with your social media, which I love is, I could sense the authentic you. And I'm the kind of person where if you look at my social media, yeah, there's a lot of photo shoots and professionally taken pictures. And those pictures sit in my phone. And I was telling somebody, I'll look at the picture. If something's weighing on me and I have something to say that's of value, I'll post it. And, to that point, I posted something about patience because that's something I'm going through right now is working on my patience. And I post that up. The smell of the rain before it actually falls. I'm sure you could sense a lot of weather analogies there. I mean, you could take me out of the weather center,
Totally.
but the weather's still in the boy. But I think we're all working towards something. I think a lot of people, we're on this planet. We don't necessarily know why, but we want something. We want purpose, right? And we're looking for validation. We're looking for comfort. And you can almost feel when it's coming. And the funny thing and the ironic thing is it's when I put myself in the most uncomfortable and uncertain situations that I start feeling the comfort come.
Right.
So I don't know if that makes sense.
Complete sense. I can completely resonate with it. And I think sometimes too, people are looking, because I'm guilty of this, where we're looking for permission to say, it's okay to do this. It's okay if it's outside the box, or it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like if you feel led to do it, then absolutely do it. So how can people find the podcast? Where do you have that?
Yeah. The podcast is No Rain, No Rainbows. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. It's also on Google Music, and it's No Rain, 3 periods, No Rainbows. But if you just type it in, it should pop up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how often do you have episodes come out?
Once a week.
Okay.
And they come out on Wednesdays. So I'll be working on getting a podcast up today.
Nice.
And they've been good. They've been really good. It's been a journey. I think I've learned a lot from the guests that I've had on the show. Definitely got to give Andre Suttles a shout out because the podcast is not possible without his help. And it's something that I jumped into. And this is, if I could share this, it's something that I jumped into before I was ready. And I think that's how you have to do it.
Right.
I think I told Charles one day, I've sat on the idea for a podcast for over a year. And I finally said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to record it on my phone, and that's what's going to happen. And it's almost like the universe waits for you to take initiative to give you what you're asking for. But Charles says, no, this guy Andre just DM'd me. He does videography and he's looking to connect. So I'll put you guys in touch. So then Andre comes in touch, and my friend Matt Snipe says, hey, you could use my podcast equipment to get yourself off the ground. And we were able to record our first podcast with some professional microphones and some nice cameras and have a viable product to start. And it kind of took me taking the jump, like, hey, I'm going to record this on my phone, for kind of everything to kind of fall into place. So the universe just was waiting for me to tell them, yeah, I want this.
Just to be like, to be in receiving mode.
Exactly.
To even receive it. Yeah, I've seen some of Andre's work. You have, I think it's on your page, or maybe I saw him. Did you just do a video on your page that you posted on your page?
He might have. He's been doing a lot.
Okay, yeah,
lately.
because I was looking. I've seen his stuff before. He is good.
Yeah,
Definitely
he's talented,
good.
and he's hungry too, which I love.
I mean, but so I was talking to one of my friends in LA yesterday, and so he does a podcast, and he and his wife are network marketing. They do a lot of online marketing, and I feel like you have this too, where there's like this certain genetic or DNA in some of us to where we're always hungry. Brendan Burchard talks about that he has a book, High Performance Indicator, and he talks about high performers. And it's not like we don't do it for recognition, for materialism, but you just know that there's more.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, right? Like you just like you're hungry because you know there's more people, there's better ways to do it, the opportunity.
I think I just, I'm here to live life, right? And I don't know what's out there, and I'm here to experience it. And, one of my problems is I say yes to so many things.
Guilty.
And I put so much on my plate, and that has led me to all the things I'm doing now, and I've had to consciously slow down, because if somebody were to call me now and they're like, hey, Ted, do you want to try out this new thing? Or my friend got a piano. He's like, hey, do you want to learn piano? Yes, I want to learn piano. I want to learn Spanish. I also want to learn Mandarin. I want to do all these things that I don't think there's enough time to do. But someone's like, you're always busy. You're always hungry. And I think it's just there's so many things I want to experience. I say yes to so many things because I don't want to live with the regret of not doing it. I've been skydiving twice, and I recommend it to anybody to at least go once, because, at the end of the day, you'd rather say that you've tried it and you've done it and didn't like it than not do it at all. Yeah,
I'm the same. I'm all about experience. I want the experience. But you're such a giver, because even, with you at GVL Hustle, with, the event you're doing tomorrow night. Oh, by the way, you were in Talk Magazine's Top 10 Stylish, talking about tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Massive congrats.
Thank you. I mean, I think everyone's seen my whole closet already, so I don't have anything else to show.
But that's so cool.
But, yeah.
That's so cool.
It was an honor. I think I've been lucky enough to have friends like Charles. He keeps my fashion sense on point. He's the kind of person that don't laugh, I'll send him a picture. If we're going out to an event, I'll send him a picture and I'm like, hey man, what do you think? He's like, switch those shoes. I was like, all right, I got you. What are you wearing?
So guys do that?
Yeah.
Girls, girls do it.
I'll say a disclaimer. When I say guys will do it, I'm not speaking for all men here. Me and Charles might be in the minority of men that do it, but we care about how we look, and we want to look good. And Charles quotes Tom Ford. So to quote Charles quoting Tom Ford, your style and your fashion is a form of manners. So being here on the show, I could have came with a hat disheveled with my gym clothes on. I was wearing my gym clothes before this, but I wanted to change, wear a tie, and look presentable, because I want to be respectful of your show, respectful of your time, and when you dress nice, I think that resonates with other people. Right,
and that's true. That's a great observation. Another thing too, I feel like as we dress, we also feel better about ourselves too. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, I could wear, I think probably for about the last 6 days, I've had no makeup and just worn gym clothes and beach clothes. But sometimes, and luckily my business allows me to do that, but then there's sometimes I just want to dress up in respect for you, obviously being here today in respect for you, but then also just to walk downtown Greenville in a dress and heels because I can.
Yeah. I mean,
just
think
because
about
it just makes you feel good.
As kids,
it is true.
How often would we play dress up?
Right.
And the boys do it too. They would probably, as a kid, I would dress up as a football player, and I'd pretend like I'm the football player wearing my pads and stuff. And, we have a sense of fantasy when we dress up, right? And, even if you're going out for a night, fellas, here's a tip for the fellas. Take your woman's favorite dress, put it on the bed, leave a card, and say, I'm picking you up at 5. We're going out to dinner. And you wear a suit. You guys will have an amazing night, and you'll feel like $1 million. And the suit doesn't change who you are, but it's just you get to play pretend for a night.
Yeah.
And fellas, if you do follow through with that, please let me know how it goes.
Well, and two, for the men to take initiative. That means a lot for the man to just say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. This is what time we're leaving. So
Oh, yeah.
All right. Men, take note. Okay. So going into Modern Man. So you created the podcast, which now, so the podcast is available nationally. Anybody can plug into that. Modern Man, is that just a local event?
That's available nationally also.
Oh, okay, cool.
So the Modern Man is actually a sub-series of the podcast. So if you subscribe to No Rain, No Rainbows, every new Modern Man will be one of the weekly episodes. It's also on YouTube, No Rain, No Rainbows, and we just made the Modern Man YouTube space for it too.
Nice.
The web space is be coming out soon also. And that lives on multiple platforms. Tyler Harris shares a lot of the Modern Man content on his page as well. He's one of the panelists that I've had. He's also the co-founder. And that's just been kind of a purpose and a mission that's really starting to take shape here in the past year or so.
Yeah, so the panelists that you have that I've seen, I think it's like 4 or 5 other guys. They're all like CEOs, founders.
Yeah.
I mean, they're prominent people.
Yeah.
Very like-minded like you, wanting to make a difference, wanting to share their story. And speaking of Tyler, I mean, he has shared very vulnerably on his social media, which I have so admired, because a lot of men don't speak the way you guys speak to say, listen, this is what I struggle with, and this is how I overcame it. And I think sometimes maybe as men, you guys have this responsibility to feel like you have to carry everything and not really show your weaknesses. And is that where Modern Man comes in, is just to really give men a safe space to say?
Yeah, I think, so it's interesting. For me, Modern Man, I think men need a network, right? It's funny because we talk a lot about emotion and vulnerability, but really the focus of Modern Man is strength and masculinity, being men. And I think in order for men to be the best selves, they can't hold it all themselves. They need a network, they need a village. And I started reading a few books, and a few books that kind of like sparked it in me was No More Mr. Nice Guy. I think it was Dr. Glover's book, and another book by Lewis Howes, Mask of Masculinity. And some of those books, they mention how if you research a married man, more often than not, he doesn't have a network of friends for emotional support, while the wife would have a network of friends. And you couple that with, especially with a lot of us paying attention to mental health these years, in recent years. And in 2017, suicide, 83% accounted for white males. And when it comes to suicide, males compared to females, males commit suicide 3.3 times more often. So for me, those numbers kind of speak for themselves. Okay, so the men don't have emotional support groups, and they're suffering from this more. And it's not to compare men and women.
Right.
It's just to say, I saw something that resonated with me, and I decided to try and pay attention to that. And I've been lucky enough to have men role models in my life. And I've always had kind of men groups from football in high school and a fraternity in college. And I'm not going to say all men groups are good, but just by having a group of men around me, I've been able to grow to where I am now. So I wanted to kind of facilitate that in the real world, because yes, you have sports, and you have fraternities in college, but in the real world, what do you have? What men group do you have where our focus, and the focus I'm hoping with the Modern Man, is going to be growth? How can we facilitate growth and help you be the best man you can be, and have you focused on strength and bettering yourself, so when emotional times come, you've already dug the well before you got thirsty, and your support group is there. You've built the trust with men, so when things get hard, you could share it with them. And I think that can kind of battle the taboo of men seeking for help. They could start by seeking for growth.
Right. And the thing that I like about that, because being so much on social media over the last several years, you're actually doing live events. So it's human interaction, human connections, which I feel like that's what a lot of people are going back to, like the networking events, the human interaction, the relationships. I know for me, for years, I lived behind a computer because for me, it was safe. It was my safe space. It was, I could message with people, chat with people, and do a Facebook Live or a video conference, and that was good. But over the last year and a half, getting out in human interaction, that was like a game changer for me. It was actually a year ago today that I started getting out, and I remember that because it was the Talk magazine, the Top 10 Stylish.
Nice. Yeah.
And that's where I met Megan Hines, and she was Gardner at the time, but that's where I met Megan. I had just met Logan, and have met some of my closest friends through those events.
Yeah.
But the human interaction. But with the Modern Man, you do regular events on that, correct?
Yeah. So the plan is going to be quarterly live events, and that came about because we've been doing the pre-recorded. They're about 45-minute long shows, and those were being done for about a year or so. We've had like one a month that we've done, and pretty much the problem that we kind of pointed out was, men need space to be with other men and grow. And then we kind of looked at each other and we said, why not just talk? Why are we just talking about the problem? Why don't we be part of the solution and create that space, which is, okay, invite men to see the recording live, and then afterwards have a reception where men can connect and hopefully build a relationship. And we also have an online space with a Facebook group, a closed Facebook group for men to kind of connect. And just to, give credit to the panelists out there, Tim Pecoraro, Jonathan Parker, Tyler Harris, Charles Russ, and really Andre and everybody around it behind the scenes. They've really believed in it, and they've really jumped in head first, donating their time and their skills, their knowledge, and their trust to help build this community and get it going. So I think we're planning on doing live events quarterly and have people come out, see the topic live. And also, I'm not sure if you saw our first live event, we have a microphone up for people to come up and share. So it's not something where we're not five guys that have it figured out. I think that's the beauty of the Modern Man is like, we don't know what it is to be a man. That's the first thing we decided. Is like, we don't know what it means to be a man, but we do know that it's something we should explore, and the journey is the destination. As long as we try to be better men, one day we might stumble on what it means to be a man, but we'll keep trying until then. So we want to hear from the other people on the problems they're having, because they're probably just like ours, and we also want to hear their thoughts on being a modern man too, because I think everybody's opinion and thoughts on it is valuable, and I'd love to take all of that and then kind of build our own personal avatar of what we think a man should be.
Yeah, I think, and I could even see that going into like other cities.
Even
surrounding cities, Charlotte, Atlanta. I could totally see that happening. So what do you think or what are you finding as the most common challenge men are facing?
Articulating.
Or is there one?
I think articulating our feelings, and it's something I have an issue with. First and foremost, I think we've been harping on emotion a lot because men we're raised kind of emotionally illiterate. Hey, man up, or boys don't cry, things like that. And I think articulating our feelings has been one thing we've kind of focused on. And when I say articulating it, is I'm not talking about saying, oh, I'm not okay, and crying and things like that. I'm thinking of like understanding the difference between being disappointed or being angry, being jealous, being frustrated, being overwhelmed, kind of knowing what the source of your emotions are. One example I can say is, with me and Jess, there was a time where I was really overwhelmed at work, and we were texting, and I could sense myself getting short. So I told her, I said, listen, I'm really overwhelmed right now with everything that's going on. If I'm short with you, I'm not angry, I'm not mad, I think I'm just overwhelmed. So being able to articulate that beforehand prevents an argument, prevents a fight, which would react in me getting defensive.
Right.
And nobody wants to go down that rabbit hole. So being able to articulate before you get to a turning point, I think is something big men can benefit from.
That's good. That's also good words of wisdom too, to like identify it before it even happens. Like you recognize you're overwhelmed. Okay, I'm being short. Let her know to prevent. So that's Smart.
Yeah.
I wondered because, I have three teenage boys, and that's one thing that I really try to instill with them is expressing your emotions, really communicating, pulling out that kind of like that feminine side of them to let them know it's okay to feel this way, talk about it. And I'm constantly, and I notice like with boys, I mean, it's just, did you have a good day at school? Yes. What'd you do? Nothing. Same thing. And so, but I know that's me too, not asking open-ended questions.
Sure.
But, just keeping that communication open.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And and I'll be honest, most boys, I mean, that's all we have to say about it. Like,
I know.
How was your day? It was good. And, I had to work on that. Like, honestly, how was my day? It was good. I don't have much more to say about it. It was work. I don't want to give the details. I think that's just some men. Men, we just want to be like, yep, it was good. If it was bad, I would have told you. If it was bad, I fixed it.
And so, I've learned to ask different questions, like, did anything exciting happen today? Or what was your favorite part about today? Or, just to make it more. But then sometimes, too, they just want to they're happy to be out of school. They just want to sit in the car.
Yeah. And I'd say the second thing, which is big for men, and just everybody, but take responsibility and just own your surroundings, your world. And when I hear the term man up, I don't want it to mean like, you got to be tough and all that. I want man up to mean that, you're a leader of your world. You are a leader of what's around you, and you have to lead your life, take control of what you want, decide the things you like, the things you don't like, and then be firm with what your boundaries are. And don't be afraid to live the life and the path that you lay out for yourself, because not everybody's going to agree with it. But I think part of being a man is blazing that path. And as long as you have a genuine good heart, you care about others, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. And so how can people tune into that event? Because I'm sure people, even if they have to make travel, do you already have the date set for the next Modern Man?
Yes. October 6th is going to be the next Modern Man. It's a Sunday, and the event's from 4 to 7. And we'll have the details coming up in about a week, in a week's time. And that'll be on Eventbrite and whatnot. And as of right now, we're opening the space to men. And I know there's a lot of women who watch the content and they want to be a part of it too. And I'm not saying that they cannot come, but we thank them for giving us the respect and the space to kind of be men and share our stories. And, there's no telling what it's going to look like in the future, the live events and how we can intermingle it and things like that. But I think right now our main focus was, let's provide this space for men and help them connect and build this community.
Well, and I think it's a great thing that you're doing to open that space up, because when I had first heard about it, and I was like, that's different, because I've never heard of anything like that. I mean, I hear of a lot of men speakers and men doing but the fact that you've created that community like that, and to even have a private Facebook group, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And for the men listening, if I could plug it, it's The Modern Man on Facebook, and you could request to join the group, and there's 2 questions of what it means to be a modern man to you, and what are some men that you look up to as role models. I think really the main goal I want out of this is to usher in a new wave of male role models for young boys to follow, because it's easier to raise men than to change grown men.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be the goal.
So who are your male role models?
Oh, man. That's a good one. Terry Crews is one. Terry Crews, I think he's done a wonderful job. Will Smith. And number 3, and the male role model I look up to the most is my dad. And I'm very blessed and lucky to be able to see that. And when I say my dad, really it's my mom and dad. I think just being lucky enough, because I know not everybody has the privilege to grow up in a 2-parent household, but seeing the chemistry between the two and how they operated and how they handled it. Like, it was a well-oiled machine. If my mom was working late, my dad cooked dinner, my mom came in, cooked, like, they handled it together as a unit. And there were times my mom had the team on her back, my dad had the team on her back. And seeing that was something I really admired, and I thank both of my parents for.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is rare.
Yeah.
That is rare these days. And to see them tag team it like that, I bet they have some amazing stories.
Oh, they have some great stories that they probably still haven't told. Both of my parents are from Haiti, so
Oh, really?
they came to this country so their kids would have a better life. So to even
Nice.
hear that was amazing. So I owe everything that I have today to both of them.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. So were you born in New York?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
born in New York, and both my parents, interestingly enough, when my mom and my dad met, my dad actually lived in Chicago, and he packed up his life and drove to New York to be with my mom. So that was another thing where, like, you talk about a man who, when you decide on who your woman's going to be, when you decide on what you're going to do in life, you're a man of your word. You stick to it, and you go forth. You push through the hard times, and at the end of the day, when I go back to responsibility, a lot of what I do, and I haven't dove into so much of the topic with Modern Man yet, but being a man is there's a lot of strength in being a man, and there's a lot of strength in being a woman, and I think the strengths are equal but different, and I'd like to kind of put into light some of the strengths that men have, because I have so much respect, love, and admiration for our strong women out there. But I do think, there's a lot of men that deserve some praise too.
Absolutely. It's obviously, I'm not a man, but being a single parent the last 7 years, experiencing some of the responsibilities that you have as men, such as, the financing side of it, the learning the tax laws and the budgets and all that. I'm like, women are not wired for this. I mean, I have so much more respect for men and I always had respect, for my husband at the time, but it's definitely different.
Yeah.
It's definitely different.
And I think gender roles are new now, right? And I always say this, for any man that's listening, to just try and sum up my theology on the whole thing. A man does what's best for his household, period. And it doesn't mean he's the breadwinner. It might mean that the wife is the breadwinner and the man holds down the home. But whatever the man does and makes the decisions that he makes in his life, I think the man makes decisions that are best for his household, period. And that is what I kind of stand behind. And I think, again, going back to responsibility and how can I make, for me and Jess, how can I make this union better? How can I make our household better? And sometimes the quarterback has to hand the ball off, not throw it or run it for a touchdown themselves. You have to let the team shine to operate well.
Right. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Did you play football?
I did.
Okay.
That's probably, yeah.
Mine played football too, so the football analogies, that's a really good one. Man, that's really good. So the Modern Man, it's I've watched some of the content and it is very good, but it also helps give me a perspective as a woman to know that perception of man, if that makes sense. So that way I can understand like Michael better, understand my boys better, to understand my father better type thing. It really helps give me perspective of like what you guys have challenges with.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's why I love that it lives online, because anybody can watch it. Anybody's invited to watch it. And of course, with our live events, we'll see how that looks like in the future. But the live events get broadcasted so anybody can watch it.
Nice.
And it's something that I think, to your point, the reason I do the Modern Man is, I don't know what it's like to be a woman. So I can't do the modern woman.
Right.
And I don't want to speak to what I don't know. And I'm not even saying I know how to be a man. I'm on this journey, and I'd like anybody who wants to come on the journey with me and help teach me some things along the way.
Well, and I feel like it's when I look back, I think, okay, there's purpose in everything that we dealt with, because now you can truly relate to people so much better. Because you know what it's like to be there. You know what it's like to be in the dark, to have the rain. You know what it's like to have the rainbow. You know what it's like to move and relocate. You know what it's like, in all these different positions.
Yeah.
So that's where I think sometimes everything that we've had to go through, it makes sense of it all.
Yeah. All the dots connect in hindsight. We just got to go through the dots first.
I know, but the dots aren't fun.
They're not. They're
Sometimes. Okay, what does it mean to be Teddy ready?
Okay.
That's something I've heard you say. You want to be Teddy ready all the time.
Yeah, always Teddy ready. ready for whatever life throws at you. Life's going to challenge you, and it's not going to wait till you're ready. It's just going to come. And when it happens, there's no changing what happens. There's no going back and taking it back. There's just, what are you going to do now, and how are you going to handle it? And just be ready to handle it. Mm-hmm. And I think being Teddy ready for me is just about pushing forward and assessing the situation as it is, and how can we learn from it, grow from it, and prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, and that's a great attitude to have. Mm-hmm. Totally great attitude to have, believing that everything has a purpose and seeing the positive in everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything that you want to share before we start to close it out? I've learned so much about you. Didn't know you were from Haiti.
Yeah.
All the good stuff.
Well, Bridget, first, thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been fun. Only thing I would want to share is genuinely what I'm learning is, anybody listening, anybody watching, I love you guys. I love you, and it's genuine from the bottom of my heart in terms of, listen, we're all running through this thing called life together, trying to figure it out. And I don't know the answers, and anybody listening or watching, regardless of what you think, with all due respect, you don't know the answers. But, let's be a team. Let's figure this out together, and leave the world a better place than what we came in with.
Yeah, you are definitely, and again, I say it over and over, you're one of the biggest givers. I know, and that's why you say yes, but you are such a giver, and your heart shows, and I have so much respect for you of how you just channel that into our local community, and even channeling it out into social media. So I know we covered a lot of the podcast, The Modern Man, but just in summary, how can we connect with you on Instagram? What's your Instagram handle?
Instagram is at Phaeton Forecast. So that's Phaeton, the number 4, KAST.
And then I'll also have him tagged on my post as well. But you got to watch his stories. You got to follow and watch his stories, because you can see him putting his tie on every morning.
I tied this one this morning.
With the music. That's kind of like your brand.
Yeah, I have fun doing that. And it's always fun. I never know what song I'm going to play until I walk in. I start shuffling through my playlist.
Isn't it interesting how people can find that so oddly entertaining?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I'm like, it's just...
I missed a day, and then somebody messaged me what happened to your tie video? And I was I didn't know it would be missed. I'm sorry.
I was like, there's just... I guess because it's so you. It's the black and white, it's the tie, it's the music, mm-hmm. It's it's the backstage of it. But okay, so Instagram, your Facebook is just your name. You have your public page.
Yeah, Ted Phaeton is the Facebook, and I have a website, which is same as my Instagram handle, PhaetonForecast.com. And that's where a lot of my stuff online lives. That links to my Instagram, that links to my podcast and all that. I actually have a blog post that I did a while, which has actually been doing pretty well. I kind of just, I sat down and put all this stuff into it. I've been reading a lot of books lately. So kind of in conjunction with No Rain, No Rainbows, The Modern Man, I did a post about 19 books every man should read to grow in 2019. I'm probably going to revise and add to the list for 2020. But that's a book, that's a blog of all the books I've read that have helped me. Mm-hmm. And I hope it can help somebody too.
Yeah. And then, so you have the website, let's see, Facebook, Instagram. I think we covered it all.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter too, but I'll admit I'm not as active as I should be. Twitter is more of an information source for me. I'm not as sharing as I am on Twitter as I am on other platforms.
So people still use Twitter?
Yeah. I think every single social media platform has its purpose, and Twitter, I think, is still the information highway. As things are happening, people talk about it on Twitter. People share it on Twitter.
So it's like real time?
Yeah,
okay.
Real time. So if you're looking to catch up with family and friends, it's probably more Instagram and Facebook. But if you want to know what's happening now, if you want to live tweet the game, or you're watching a show, you're watching The Bachelorette, you can type in the Bachelorette hashtag while you're watching it, and you'll see some funny reactions. It's very entertaining.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't even used Twitter in I don't know how long. I don't know people still used it, but
yeah.
Again, real time. Okay, well, thank you again, Ted, for being on. We'll have this recording out. And again, thank you, Old Europe Pastries, for sponsoring today's show. And we look forward to connecting with you very soon.
Absolutely.